everyone, and welcome to the 25th episode of the SERPs of the week. Hi, Kelvin. How are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Hello to everyone watching along and listening along. Yeah, love to speak to you.
Yeah, you haven't been speaking for a very long time, right?
Well, time flies. Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
I think like more than like 5. Well, no, not 5, like 4 years definitely, because the last time BrightonSEO I was attending, it was before COVID even.
Yeah.
Gosh, time flies too fast.
Yeah, that's messed with everyone's sense of time, hasn't it? In terms of that kind of things that might have been annual weren't, and then we were having just this discussion this morning about sort of like something in 2019, an event there, and kind of going, that's ages ago, but it wasn't. It was only like 3 or 4 events ago, and that it's a
yeah, that is very true, right? Okay, guys, I have the pleasure to introduce Kelvin Newman, is the founder of BrightonSEO, the largest search market conference on both continents nowadays, here in Europe and in the US. When did you have, Kelvin, the first BrightonSEO in San Diego? Last year?
Yes, yeah. So November just gone. So that was kind of exciting for us and a new thing, and really pleased with getting it off the ground. It kind of has been one of those ones that was on the to-do list for a really long period of time, and it just kind of like the stars aligned, and it felt like it was the right time to give it a go.
What about was it as big as the one in the UK?
No, it's smaller out there, so it's about half the size. So I mean, I think the aspirations there are that it could be as big as, if not potentially a little bit bigger, in fact. But for us, kind of the launching the first time out there, we were kind of we had to build our reputation, which is obviously like opportunity for us, and and it was kind of and again the format, and there's lots of interesting aspects of how event venues and obviously the event space out there works quite differently, and like geographically also it's a very different country to England, and even in Europe. So like to get to the event in the UK, it's very straightforward for someone in London, pretty much anywhere in the UK actually, to sort of nip for a day or a single night stay, whereas in the States it's such a big country that tends to be needing more of those kind of multiple day trips. So I mean, it was it's a interesting space, the US, because obviously there's lots of really great events out there already. There's lots that used to run that don't run, and some that have switched to
I know that Search Love used to be in San Diego, right?
So Lindsay, who used to run Search Love, joined us as an employee, so that was part of the Search Love isn't around anymore at the moment, and the same for HeroConf. But Search Love used to be in San Diego, and obviously SMX in the US now is predominantly online. PubCon's back in Vegas in a few weeks' time. But sort of like there was a bit of a kind of felt like there was space for us to do our sort of version of a search event in the States, and it seemed to go quite well, and the response has been really, really good, and we're really excited and already planning for 2024's event. And in fact, actually the big stress at the moment for me is like trying to pin down our 2025 US venue deal at the moment, and that's proving quite a headache, but we'll get there, and it'll be good.
So you're right now right in the middle of organizing the next edition of San Diego, right?
Yeah. It's a strange one because obviously, like in the UK, we do the events every 6 months. So that's kind of we're quite used to that routine of like you finish one event and you're immediately into the next one. Whereas we're only once a year in the States. So that's kind of quite a strange sort of shift of pattern when you're used to delivering things on one schedule, and it's a 12 month. So it's kind of on the one hand we're very far ahead, because we've got like quite a lot of speakers confirmed. We've got the ballot taking place, and it's still, I've got on my fridge over here. So it's 279 days. Got like a countdown thing. We're kind of it'll be around in no time, that's for sure.
Okay. By the way, why San Diego, may I ask?
Well, I mean, so obviously people who've never been to the UK event before, BrightonSEO, the original UK one in the city of Brighton, takes place. Well, Brighton is a seaside city, so it's on the beach. It's a pebbly beach, not kind of as exciting as a lot of the European sunny beaches, but it's for a British beach, it's pretty good. So it's a seaside location. It's not always sunny, but Brighton, because I went to university in Brighton, and Brighton is the sunniest city in the UK, so kind of take that with a pinch of salt.
In the sunniest, really?
We kind of like when we were looking for a US city, we kind of wanted one that had a similar kind of like holiday-ish, but not like a resort kind of thing, like a city
Yeah, not like Miami, right?
No, it's not quite that one. But yeah, it felt like a good fit for us, and yeah, it's been good, and yeah, it's obviously nice to have. It's quite a party city, San Diego as well, which Brighton has aspects of. It's a big event city as well, so they've got the convention center. They've had, shamelessly, I'm not like deliberately, but I'm wearing. I don't know if you can see, but I'm wearing a San Diego Comic Con. And there's Comic Cons in San Diego at their exhibition center, and like basically there's huge events on there, every day of every week, every year. So yeah, it's really well set up for it, and the hotels are amazing. The venues are good. There's like an ecosystem of companies and suppliers and stuff that sort of are able to make these events work. Because obviously, like, I kind of like stand in front and like talk about us as kind of the organizers, but there's a whole heap of, riggers, AV technicians, lighting crew, all of the stuff that goes on.
I know. We have our own upcoming event, so I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, lots of people
So
involved.
I'm very well aware. So we have here in the Netherlands, right?
Yeah.
So in Eindhoven, which is quite close to Amsterdam, right? We found a very good venue. They recently renovated it. It's just kind of each seat is equipped with chargers and whatever it is, which is very nice. It's very cool. Yeah, the place is very cool, really. It's not really in the city center, which is another problem. Then you need to help guests to get there, which is a separate story, right? But the venue is very nice.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's like there's pros and cons to all kinds of spaces as well. And again, it's been an interesting one for us because, like, in the UK event, we've been in the same venue for quite a long time now. We've only really properly been in two venues, and like there weren't any really the choice. It was like the medium-sized venue in Brighton, then the big venue in Brighton. So we've never had this kind of choice of choosing a venue. And yeah, it's kind of quite interesting when you have these processes kind of going, okay, well, we could be here, we could be here, we could be here, we could be in this city, we could be in that city, and it's kind of quite daunting for anyone who's I'm like hugely impressed by anyone who kind of goes out and goes, yeah, I'm starting an event, and then goes and looks for where to put it on. Whereas like we never had that choice, and I think that's been good because it made. I'm not sure I would have.
So you've been doing it always in one venue, right, in Brighton?
Yeah. So there's the Dome.
No, you changed it, I think, because you used to do it 6-7 years ago. It was a bit different, right? So you changed it.
Yeah,
it was Brighton Dome, right? And then it was a newly built kind of arena, whatever it is.
Yeah. So there used to be the Brighton Dome, which is like an old historic.
It's very nice, actually. I remember I used to speak in a church.
That
is one of the slots. It was in a kind of a church.
Yeah. And so that one, and it's also where ABBA won Eurovision. So it's an interesting fact. And then we're now in the centre, which is kind of like a multi-purpose venue, but like does comedy, does live music. It's just like a big empty box, most of it, and then we kind of roll up and fill it up with lots of search marketers from all over the world.
Yeah, for sure. And we always start with the same question about, related to SEO, right? Each and every of our guests, we ask this question. So why did you decide to go with SEO? Not with something else like social media marketing, there it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say my kind of route to SEO was the kind of, I suppose, journalism, really. So I at university was quite into music, and my first job out of university was working for a magazine company. So I worked on a few different magazines, but kind of a lot of them were music magazines. So like Kerrang and Q and Mojo. I didn't work directly on those. I was more on the kind of men's lifestyle ones, so like Arena and Zoo and various ones there. And so I was working on those men's magazines in the UK. And at that point in time, they had websites, but they weren't the focus for those businesses. They were all about the magazine, getting the print edition out every week or every month. And I there as kind of like a trainee, really, for want of a better description, started writing on their websites alongside my day job, which was more kind of admin for the magazines. So it was like an online writer, I suppose, would be the or an aspiring online writer, maybe is a better way of putting it. So in that process of kind of writing online, I wanted to try and go, well, how can I get more traffic to the content that I'm producing, and sort of came across SEO as kind of as an idea. And it was really interesting. So at that point in time, I was living in Brighton, which is about an hour away from London. So I was living in Brighton and traveling every day up to London, and didn't really love that. I kind of like didn't like being on the train
Oh,
for
that is
every day.
quite not really the best commute, right?
No.
It's quite
I spent
hectic.
I spent more on my train fare than I did on my rent at that point in time as well. So it was kind of like frustrated, kind of looking for a kind of change, and yeah, kind of discovered SEO and kind of, well, what's SEO jobs, and kind of at that point in time there was quite a few SEO agencies based in Brighton, and now there's many, but at the time it was kind of a strange sort of hotspot of SEO relatively early on. I mean, there was still, it'd been around for a few years at that point in time, but there were quite a few, eye crossing as it is now, but was then Spannerworks. There's Sitability, who I worked for, and various other firms. There were like probably about 10 or 12 decent sized SEO agencies in Brighton, which like probably at that point in time when there was maybe only, I don't know, 60 or 70 big agencies in the UK. So kind of like it just was this happy chance of I was living in a place where SEO was becoming quite a, you know, a growing thing to work in. And yeah, it kind of appealed to my interest in writing, interested in like I did media studies and stuff like that at university. So I was quite interested in publishing. So kind of that like link building was kind of the route that I came to it that way around. So copywriting and link building. So yeah, and it kind of fit quite well with my skill sets. And albeit now I'm probably more an event organizer than an SEO. But
you still kind of combine, right? Because
well, yeah, I have to keep it. I have to keep
kind
up
of
with it.
you can't really write. You can't really choose the right, most probably the
Yeah.
speakers, right? Because that is the part of your job as well. Because
Yeah, I
otherwise,
would say, yeah, I'm aware of what's interesting. I'm not a very good SEO, maybe is a better way of putting it now. So kind of like if I actually had to go and do it, I'd probably have to be doing a lot of Googling and a lot of reading of tutorials, but hopefully still have a good idea what kind of is interesting for people who are more experienced and more qualified to be able to do it day in, day out.
yeah, that is a very interesting story because different people they fell in love when they discover, right? I saw at in very different ways, I would say, right? So some of them never heard about SEO, some of them were looking for SEO as a way of kind of changing, right, their career, or just kind of finding some ways of stop going, or work remotely even, right? So there are different ways of how people are ending up with SEO
Yeah.
and just becoming
And I think
SEO
that's to the,
professional.
yeah, I think that's to the benefit of the industry as well. So what you do have is like you might get, I don't know, accountancy or something like that. That might be as a sector or industry that someone could work in, and you kind of have to decide relatively, or maybe even before going to university, or essentially you finish university and you become an accountant. That's quite different to SEO, where you've kind of often got people, oh, I was a web developer and got a little bit more into it that way round, or I was a marketer and my agency won more and more work around this, or I was a digital PR person, applied for a PR role, but ended up working for an SEO agency. And you get all these different routes that people have. And I think that's actually to the benefit of the industry, because you have a more diverse set of experiences and a more diverse sort of variety of skills that go into the type of people who are working in the space.
Yeah, but I think that's where kind of different social proof elements are becoming especially important, just because if you don't really have a degree, right, in SEO, and you really want to stand out, you really want to have a better job, right, and you want to have a strong profile, so that's where you need also to have a quite strong brand, right? You need to write somewhere, you need to speak somewhere, and so on. Do you think, right, that nowadays it's important, right, to build up your personal brand in the SEO space? Do you think
Yeah,
it's beneficial, right?
I certainly think there can be some value in that. And I mean, obviously, people are going to approach that in different ways. So, sort of, some people will quite like putting themselves out there and presenting themselves via blogging or speaking at conferences or being on podcasts or whatever it is. And that might be their way of doing
Oh,
it.
writing on LinkedIn, right, which is
Yeah.
a new source.
Yeah. So it certainly seems to be kind of, yeah, yeah, LinkedIn's a big one for us at the moment. But yeah, it's certainly,
It's a new
yeah,
personal blog, right?
yeah.
Professional personal blog.
Yeah, but so that's one way of doing it. I mean, I certainly think if you want to progress well in your career, you've got to kind of have a story about like your career and how you're presenting yourselves. And obviously, that doing that in a public way is often quite logical way of doing that. You don't have to, but I think you kind of need to be thinking about, well, what's your portfolio, what's your the case studies that you've been involved in, what's the successful work that you've done, and that could be big campaigns that have been hugely successful. It could just be like, well, I was working on this charity website and it allowed me to do this, and it's sort of like that demonstrating of expertise. And I think you need to have the expertise to do the thing, but you also need a way of communicating that expertise that you've got that. And blogging or social media can be one way of doing that. Entering awards or just like writing up good reports can be a good way of doing that. But if you're applying for a job, being able to demonstrate, here's the great work I've done before, is very important. And it is quite hard because there aren't those qualifications. There isn't that kind of traditional route that people might have, and also different firms, majors.
No kind of degree, right? So you just
I mean, there's a few out there that touch upon it, but certainly there isn't this like, well, everyone does the same thing, and that's certainly true. And I mean, it's also like even job titles can mean quite different things, so an SEO manager in one agency might mean something quite different to an SEO manager in another agency. So again, how do you can't just rely on qualifications or job titles to be able to determine if anyone's any good at their job. You need some kind of credibility, and often like, well, if you can go, well, here's a blog post I've written about something that we've done, that's a good way for you to demonstrate, you know what you're talking about. And it's never a bad practice to get in as well. So I do less of it now, but when I was doing more conference presentations at other people's events, I really liked that process because it kind of gave me the nudge to write up my thinking and my experience and the things that I was doing, and also think about how do you craft that into a story or an idea, and kind of it allows you to sort of crystallize the work that you're doing. So I quite liked it for that reason. Like blogging and conference presentations, I really enjoy, because it's like, well, here's the nitty gritty messy work that you do, and then kind of go, well, let's take a step back and go, well, what's the nice, pretty, simple version of that you can explain to someone else that hopefully motivates them to try and do something new or a bit different.
It's making a lot of sense, right? Those like elements, they're kind of creating a very solid picture, right? Giving you a competitive advantage over the right. If right, let's say like two people with the same qualification, right, with a quite similar background, right, but one has some public appearance, let's say, right, and it's kind of he or she has a brand, right? It's kind of making this person was probably more likable, right? And kind of giving maybe some advantage, right? Sure the company is looking for that type of profile.
I mean, sure. And it doesn't have to be publicly facing, right? It could be that kind of like, but it's just that, having, there's a really good skill in people's careers is being able to demonstrate their personal value. And that's so if you're able to present and go, well, here's the value that I contributed to this project, that doesn't necessarily need to have been a public thing, but it's kind of, you've gone, well, here's what I did, here's what I did, and here's why it was important, and here's the value that I created for the project that I was working on. And you can publicly produce that and share that and get some value from that as a blog post or a LinkedIn article or a conference talk, or that could be an internal document, right? You've got to, if you're working in-house or you're working, agency side, you've got to produce these reports or kind of presentations on the work that you've done. And that's a good skill set and practice to get into, right? To kind of go, well, what value did I contribute to this project?
Yeah, for sure. It's very important to be able to communicate properly, right? What you've done so far and how, right, this, right, contributed to the overall process, right? I wanted to ask about BrightonSEO, since you're the person behind BrightonSEO, and we are talking about a personal brand and so on, right? If someone wants to speak at BrightonSEO, right? So what most probably will be, how should the winning pitch look like, right?
Yeah, so we have a pitch form. That's kind of the process that we do. Different events will work in different ways, and some will kind of deliberately go out to people and ask them to speak, and that's not quite the format that we use. We tend to encourage
Mm-hmm.
people to put themselves forward, um, and we're mostly, or initially at least, judging the people we're inviting based upon the topic ideas. So again, that might be a bit different. Other events I know sometimes kind of ask the people to put themselves forward and don't really have to decide what their title is until nearer the event. That's not the way that we do it. We kind of go the other way around and say, well, what do you want to talk about? If we like what your idea is, we'll then look to see if the person's credible to deliver the topic.
Okay, so you start with the topic, right?
Yeah.
And what will be the right angle, right? Because there are so many things that you can talk about always, right? And especially most probably whenever you are a professional and you think about that, it might look especially important for you, right? Or especially interesting for you, but not necessarily it might be the same if you pitch this, right, to someone else that is not involved in your processes, right? So how to frame this in the right way, because I think framing is the most important thing here.
Yeah, I think you're bang on there in terms of how you like present that is often quite important as well. And we're kind of like, the reality is that like we get lots and lots of pitches, and I'm sure this is the same for other event organizers. Where
How many did you get the last Brighton SEO?
well, it's a
I just
crazy
wonder.
number. So I mean, to give you like a practical example, in San Diego, so we've done like our first wave of speaker invites, and I've got maybe about 20, 25 slots to play with at the moment in terms of speakers I'd like slots I would like to do. And I've gone through the pitches we've had for the US and removed all of those that I didn't quite like the look of. So it's only those that I like, right? So only those that I'd be really happy to kind
So
of
you
go.
kind of,
Yeah.
highlighted them, right?
Yeah, and I've still got like 120 for 25 slots. And every single one of those 120 that we've got there are really good. Like genuinely, like there would be no, I could all of those, if I said yes, then they will do a really good job. Because they'll either be great speakers who I know are really good, or I don't know them, but like the title is really, really exciting. So it's really tricky, to kind of go and like I'm turning away talks that will be really good and speakers who are really high quality because there's just not enough slots to the space. But what I will say is that shouldn't discourage people from pitching, because actually we as an organizer have a different set of objectives and who we're selecting to maybe other people. So I think other organizers maybe that are predominantly paid for tickets, maybe a single track or fewer tracks than we have, are often trying to get who's got the highest profile, and who
Yeah,
do people
I know.
know are going to do a good talk as well. Whereas we're like, well, actually, we're quite fortunate because we do so many free tickets, because of the way that the event sort of works, we don't really announce the full speaker lineup till most of the tickets are already gone. So we're looking for kind of like new ideas. And actually, when I talk about, we look at the title first, but then when we do have titles we like, we go, okay, well, actually, is this person a new voice? And for us, that's often quite good. We did get people
Yeah,
back.
I know that you give a lot of priority to new voices, right? So I think roughly 80% of your speakers are quite new ones, right? I look at Brighton SEO speakers for the April's edition, and I think I don't really know these people, right? Which means most probably they are quite fresh.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's something that we prefer, and that can be, and we do get people back, right? Like, let's be fair, there's like certainly people who we kind of, and usually it's because people have got very good at understanding what we like. So in terms of like when we were talking about the framing, like we really like things that are phrased as like questions. So like how to do X, Y, Z, or whatever it is, and we like those to be quite narrow. Because like the worst thing you could pitch for our event is like we have a form and it's like, what would you like to talk about? And someone will put like link building in and just put that as 2 words and kind of go, and we're like, well, that's straight in the no pile because it's not been very detailed. Whereas the people kind of go,
Yeah.
well, I'll talk about how to use AI to generate ideation, like email subject lines for, whatever it is. The more detailed it is, usually that's got my ears pricked up, and I'm kind of going, this could be a really interesting topic. And yeah, trying to understand about again, sometimes like we quite like niche things as well, because we've got multiple tracks going on. We're looking for not necessarily what's going to be the most popular topics, we're kind of going, well, what could make 200 people will find really, really interesting, because we know we've got other tracks that are going to appeal to 800 people or 1,000 people, and we're kind of going, well, what are the ones that are going to be like really, really valuable to the people who do attend, even if that's not necessarily the biggest audience.
Yeah, so, right, to sum this up, the pitch should be most probably something around actionable, right, insights. So something like how to style, that will be, practical, because otherwise if it's kind of a generic one or talking about, let's say, the future of SEO, then the speaker should be very good, right? So otherwise you can't really most probably engage, right, an audience in a proper way. So you can't really deliver this, because you need to have a lot of experience besides just understanding, right? Because it's quite hard, most probably, to talk about that generic things, even though they might be very interesting, right? But you also need to have a lot of experience, right, in order to present something. It might be most probably something not really, eye-opening, but something that you kind of thought about previously.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, it doesn't need to be completely new. And like, again, we've got a significant number of the people that come to our events have never been to a Brighton SEO before. A lot have never been to a digital marketing event before. So yeah.
Oh, very interesting. So you have a lot of entities that kind of trying to actually understand what is SEO.
Yeah. And it might be that they're kind of like, they work for an SEO agency, or actually in lots of cases they work for a brand. Digital marketing's like their responsibility. They want to learn more about this particular topic. And it's not the, if you go to a lot of events, you'll know a lot of people who go to a lot of events. So your inclination might be, to assume that most of these people have been to lots of other events, seen lots of talks before. And that's sometimes we get people to repeat talks, because actually from I think there's a bit of a shame sometimes in the industry where you get someone who'll put hours and hours and hours of work into a really cool idea, present it once, and then never use that again. And that's like, well, that's sort of mad to some extent, because it's like, actually, I'd rather have one really high polished talk that might have been seen a few times before, than one that kind of like got rushed out just to make it have a different title to the ones they've done before. I mean, there's a balance you've got to strike, and you wouldn't want it to be like everything's a repeat, but certainly like if someone says, I presented this talk before here and it worked really well, and I think I can improve it in these ways, like that again is me kind of going, yeah, that's a good sign that here's a topic that's worked well.
Yeah, that is understandable for sure, right? And most probably whenever you do it the second time, you still do some tweaks here and there. So it won't be completely the same, but the topic for sure can be right the same.
Yeah.
I just wanted about Brighton. So in terms of, right, since you have a lot of very fresh speakers, right, in terms of their speaking career, right? So do you do any trainings, or do you help people, right, to understand better how they need to present, right? What do you expect from them? Just because obviously some of them are not really familiar with some basic stuff.
Yeah. I mean, so some of that, there's a degree of mentoring. So we kind of offer anyone who wants to, like a couple of our experienced speakers are kind of available for chats and conversations if people kind of prefer that one-to-one sort of mentoring style of stuff. And also we do a speaker training day in London. So there's an opportunity for about 20 or 30 or so of our speakers all come together.
When do you plan to do the next one?
So we get the speakers who are selected for the talk and invite them along. So I think it's in a couple of weeks. So my colleague Andrew organises those, and they're like, we'll get of our April cohort and get the people who, usually it's the first time speakers for us who are doing that, but not always. Often people who've gone before, and they work with a guy called Matt, who we've worked with for a number of years, and he's really, really good at kind of the storytelling and the narrative aspects of putting together a presentation. So that always goes down really, really well. I do kind of webinar-y sessions with the speakers about slide design that they sometimes find useful. And yeah, we know when there are some events where they will kind of do a real, like I think MozCon are really good at this, where they get really involved in like the presentation design, and there'll be like lots of to and fro and that kind of thing. We don't unfortunately have the resources to be able to do that with 120 speakers, but what we do try and go is, well, where people are comfortable and confident, we'll let them get on with it. But where people are kind of newer and want to get advice, we're very happy to support them in that way, shape, or form. And we do things like we sort of like have a WhatsApp group for the speakers in the run up to the events. There's a lot of kind of peers supporting peers, so that kind of often works quite well. And getting people, like there might be 3 people in one session, and we'll say, you should have a video call between the 3 of you beforehand, and that sort of often helps.
Yeah, that is very nice for sure, to get along with each other.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the reality is that, it's again, usually it's just mostly about letting people realize that it's normal to be nervous about doing a talk, and like, there's
it's completely fine. You have to be nervous, actually.
This is it. It's like like if you didn't care, then they're more worried about the people who are completely no nerves. I mean, that's fine, but it's a kind of like there will be if you're like, you've got a slight trepidation about it, that means you're taking it seriously. So that's kind of good for me as a kind of organizer to know that that people care.
No, I know. I remember I think I did my very first speaking gig at BrightonSEO as well, many years ago.
That's always good to hear. I always love that when people
very
nervous. Well, I always love it when there's people like now kind of like, they've gone on and had exceptional careers and really, really talented. You kind of go, I had my first opportunity at like BrightonSEO. It's like, well, I'd like to have this incredible ability to kind of pick talent. It's like, no, it's not the case. It's just like people who are on an upward trajectory know what they're doing, right? And they apply to us when they're on that route upwards. But it's always nice to hear when people have kind of like, early on in their career, they had a chance to speak at BrightonSEO and have gone on to, bigger and better things. It's always exciting to hear.
Yeah, for sure. And Kelvin, to wrap this beautiful conversation up, I just want to ask for your maybe number one tip if you want to start building up your personal brand in the SEO space, right? What that will be.
I mean, I think you can't go too far wrong with having sort of a bit of an area of specialism, or an area that you get known for this one particular thing, whether that's a kind of like a tactic in a sector, or a niche kind of area, and kind of like going, well, you're going to write about this particular tool or this particular approach, and kind of giving yourself 6 to 9 months of kind of concentrating on one particular area. Because the nature of like the day-to-day job of anyone working in search marketing is you're probably doing all kinds of different things. But in terms of, for people who might not know you, knowing that you're the go-to person on this particular topic or this particular subset of an idea, and doing lots of talks around that, or lots of LinkedIn updates or Twitter updates around a topic, will really help people kind of be known for that particular area. And don't feel that you're then typecasting yourself, because like down the line you can expand to talk about other things, but kind of having this clear, like, well, that's the go-to person about, the
I'm very good with that, or something like that, right?
And I think that's kind of, it's really good to sort of like get known for a particular specialism, and then you can always broaden out your experience from there. But kind of consciously kind of going, well, what's something that you think's really interesting that lots of people aren't necessarily talking about as much as they could, and that's a really good starting point to then kind of become known as the person who has lots of thoughts about that area, and then the rest will sort of cascade from that, I think.
Okay. It's making a lot of sense, and I think being a bit more laser targeted, right? Not talking about SEO and all possible things that you might know, might not know. It doesn't matter, right? So just kind of choosing something specific that will be very helpful, especially as a starting point, right?
Excellent.
Thank you very much, Kelvin, for this great conversation. Could you please remind our listeners about the next BrightonSEO conference, about the dates and so on? So people can actually join it, right?
So we're the 25th and 26th of April in the UK. So that's coming up, the next one there. We've got another one in October in the UK. But then the next US one is in November. So that's couple of weeks before Thanksgiving in November. And yeah, tickets are kind of on the various websites. So it's BrightonSEO.com or us.BrightonSEO.com for the US version of the website.
Thank you very much, Kelvin, for such a great conversation. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.